Serbian characters, or did you go to Bosnia to Serbia?
My research consisted of a trip to Bosnia, Serbia, and Croatia to interview soldiers that were part of the war and to observe the behavior of the people and the soldiers in particular, and to understand the war, because honestly, before the film, I didn't understand the dynamic of the war, and it was very important for me to understand it in order to play this character and why he was thinking the way he was thinking, and why he would be forced to feel that he had to do war crimes, you know. So it was very important that I went to these countries to observe and to interview. Very nice. Some favorites that I would like to work with that I have not yet, and you know, I've always said that my future roles are in the imagination of writers and the imagination of directors, because most of the roles I've ever played in my career, I've never imagined that I would play, you know, and but when someone came up with the good idea, I came to the game and fulfilled these characters, but they're usually in the imagination of people like you know, so that's what I depend on, you know.
Deliverance. And currently films like Hunger Games are hugely popular with young audiences. Do you feel times have changed from the time when young audiences, it's me, I've got my Deliverance shirt on. Young audiences like the glamour of Saturday Night Fever's dance floor, and now looking more for fighting for survival. Have you noticed that sort of trend?
Yes, it's an interesting trend, isn't it? Yeah, actually, I think you're right. They have looked more toward that. I was hoping with Killing Season to give them more of an anti-war message, just because it's been a long time since movies have tried to say these things. I grew up with them, you know. I was a young teenager in the 60s and 70s, and I was witnessing the protest of war as a concept. So that's where my heart is. But after a certain period of time, there's no longer these films. So I was hoping to not inspire so much the survival of two rugged men, but more look at the mental anguish that war has and crimes of humanity have caused these two men. So my personal motivation was a little different than the trend that you're speaking of. Yeah. I think that like any lineage in literature, it has its own sequence and trend, and you know, it may fade out and something new will come in. But I don't know particularly why. But you know, why are zombies interesting to audiences now? You know, that kind of thing. It's a puzzlement. You know.
Youngest of 6 children of an actress and singer and teacher, do you still remember when and how you got the acting bug? Was that very early? And the second little question, for my generation, you've always been the king of cool, yeah, with films like Saturday Night Fever and Pulp Fiction, and even Hairspray was a very cool thing to do. But who for you was the coolest woman you've ever worked with? Who for you is the queen of cool in Hollywood, and why? Thank you.
That's I didn't expect that question. Who is the queen of cool in Hollywood? Well, you know, I have a soft spot for good acting. So Kate Blanchett and Meryl Streep would be the queen of cool for me, but that's because I love great acting. So they can do anything and they portray anything, and I think that's cool, you know. Thanks.
How did you start acting?
Oh, my mother was a metteur en scène, an actress, and chanteuse. And every night she would go to the theater. And 3, 4, 5 years old, I would go to the theater and watch her. And then my sister started, and I was 6, 7, and watched her in the theater. And then my other sister, at 9 or 10, watched her. And by the time I was 12, I was in the theater. So from 3 or 4 till 12 years of age, I only watched my family in the theater and some film. I liked, in those days when I was a little boy, I liked La Strada, and I liked Yankee Doodle Dandy, and those are my favorite movies that would repeat on television. So between my family's theater and these very important movies that inspired me when I was young, that created the acting bug and the performance.
Is there a difference for you with these foreign finance movies and Hollywood finance movies for you?
Yes, in particular, the gentlemen that finance these kinds of movies are interested in allowing the artist to do something that is specifically inspired by them, their special interests, and it's very difficult in the United States to get a film like Killing Season financed because it's more of an actor's movie, it's more of a psychological movie, and cerebral, even though it's got action in it, it's much more, a message movie. So you need companies like this company that from Belgium and Avi Lerner that will be willing to finance special projects that mean something to the artist. And you're very lucky if that happens, because I like actors' movies, those are my thing. So nowadays it's more difficult to get these financed, and this company that you're speaking of is very good. I've done 3 movies that were actors' movies by this company.
In what degree do you have to get involved as an actor in this kind of message or this kind of thinking, and how did you work your accent, which is quite impressive?
Well, the accent, start with that, was several angles I approached. I interviewed about 25 Serbian and Bosnian and Croatian soldiers. So I had them in my ear for several months, and I hired a very sophisticated vocal coach in the United States. And I have a very good Bosnian friend and a very good Serbian friend, and they both helped me as well. So I had about 40 people working on this with me, which was very exciting to get it exactly right. And my research in those 3 countries was mostly to, one, understand the war, because I didn't understand it before, it was confusing. And number 2, try to comprehend what would motivate your average guy committing war crimes, like what would prompt him to do that. So that's what because we're similar in our approach to acting, and we're old timers. We've been around a long time, so there's no bullshit. You're authentic and with each other, and you have a job to do, and it's very professional, and it's simple. Yeah, it was beautiful, really.
Involved. And I have a second question. I was in Bosnia right after the war, and I still don't understand it. So what did you understand about that war?
So the thing that I discovered about the average soldier was that man, for the most part, is basically good, but they can be persuaded by moral code to do things that they would not normally do. And the ones that are healthier feel great remorse about it, and the ones that are already not so well are the ones that have less remorse about it. So that's what I discovered about the soldiers. If few, and then I'll get into the war. They're dissecting the points of the war that were about religion and politics. What I found out, the real reason is that there were bigger countries that were encouraging these smaller countries, and it was really more about being forced into something that had the face of religion and politics, but the truth was it was about money behind the smaller countries, and they're the obvious suspects. But that's the biggest revelation that I found, was that it wasn't really so much about religion and politics, but it was much more about who needs this war for money purposes.
And would you like, if some director someday proposed to make your own life story?
No. I'm sure when I die, there'll be a film about me, like there are so many actors in the world, but no, I would rather not star in my own movie.
No, très peu pour moi.
Thanks for the offer.
And now, retrospectively, would you say that your dreams came true and you became who you wanted to be?
To be completely honest, it went beyond my dreams. I was hoping to make a living as an actor, meaning just to, survive as an actor. And it was some people that surrounded me that believed there could even be more than that, more than just a living. And then, as I said earlier, because of the imagination of writers and directors, I had this amazing opportunity to be many different characters and things, which I knew I had the ability to do, but I never thought I'd have the opportunity to be allowed to do it by the audience and by the studios.
Approach between the two as being like very professional.
Yes. Yeah. In life, I believe that you must approach anything that you do professionally, and the specific approach to be a pilot is very similar to being an actor, discovering a role. You have a checklist of things you have to do, accents you have to learn, behavior, modifying your physical look, and so that in a cockpit, you have everything you have to do to understand the instruments and the emergency procedures, and so there's a rhythm that's quite similar in that. And then the joy of creating is not unlike the joy of being in the air and having the freedom of flight.
Specific difficulty for this film. And then, who would you say is the new John Travolta today?
There's the research for The Killing Season was the most, let's say, involved, more homework to do, because it was a global affair that maybe playing the President Clinton, I had to understand politics better than I did, but in this movie, understanding a war and why it existed, the research was probably the most challenging, to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and really try to make sense of it, and as far as who would be, I don't know, maybe you could tell me who do you think?